I've been waiting my whole life for this one. Orthopedic surgeon and husband for The View host Sunny Hostin has been named in a federal lawsuit alleging insurance fraud.
I agree with mostly everything that's been said. I mean, we know that, only about 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions? Yeah. Like you said, and it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there.
When public figures build their careers on moral superiority, the universe has a way of testing their convictions. That's exactly what happened this week when one of daytime television's most outspoken commentators found herself in an uncomfortable spotlight. What happens when those who judge others face judgment themselves? When the tables turn on someone who's made a career of pointing fingers? Stick around, because this story has everything: financial disaster, public scrutiny, and the kind of irony that makes you wince and laugh at the same time.
She is not implicated in the lawsuit at all, but it's just, Pat, you're married. Tom, you're married. If your husband's doing something, if he's allegedly doing something like this, you guys would know if your wives were up to some nefarious stuff. Let's just not forget who she is. She's been, for years, lecturing America about morality and equality, systemic failures, and look at her track record. How many times has she had to go on in the past 2 months and look at the camera and do a legal apology for all the stuff that she said on the show?
In the criminal case, now the prosecutors are like, oh, really? Well, how about we add some additional fraud charges onto you? And they're talking about threatening him with insurance fraud, which I would say you could get about 20 years in prison. So that's a death sentence for him.
You know, the type television personalities who sit in designer outfits in perfectly lit studios, telling everyday Americans how to think, how to vote, how to live. They exude an air of untouchable wisdom while sipping from network-provided mugs. They furrow their brows with practiced concern when discussing society's ills. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, well, that's where reality sometimes tells a different story. It's like watching someone preach about financial responsibility while their own credit card gets declined at Whole Foods. Or hearing lectures about authenticity from someone whose entire persona was crafted by a PR team. The disconnect can be breathtaking.
Their brains are small. But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sunny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now, The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass doesn't shatter.
Let's talk about what's happening with one particular host from a popular daytime talk show, a program where women gather around a table to discuss current events, politics, and social issues. This host has built her brand on being the voice of moral clarity. With eloquent speech and unmistakable confidence, she regularly delivers verdicts on public figures and everyday citizens alike. You've seen her. Head tilted slightly, eyebrows raised, speaking with the assurance of someone who believes they've considered all angles and arrived at the only reasonable conclusion. Her signature move? That particular blend of disappointment and indignation when addressing those who don't align with her worldview. She's masterful at making a houseplant feel guilty for not being environmentally conscious enough.
The problem is that you have to go after the racist people. And if the CEO goes, you know what, I'm not going to allow a woman on my show, or man, that will go after white America and talk about them like dogs. That doesn't represent our ideals or values for anyone. And get rid of those people, and this will clear up real quick. So do you have to actually look in the mirror and clean up your own backyard and get the racist people out? Because that's who you allowed in. You allowed black racist on TV who could just go all day and say anything about white people. And I guess lo and behold, they forgot that there's a lot of people at home, white people at home during the day, that are not watching your show anymore. So just clean it up.
Yeah, Emily.
But here's where our story takes a turn. While our host was busy on television analyzing everyone else's choices and behaviors, a financial storm of epic proportions was brewing in her own household. Her spouse, it turns out, wasn't exactly following the financial wisdom she might espouse on air. The irony here is thick enough to spread on toast. Imagine building your personal brand around accountability, and then discovering your own house isn't exactly in order. It's like a fitness influencer being caught with a secret freezer full of ice cream, except in this case, we're talking about financial decisions with consequences in the hundreds of millions.
So that makes Sunny Hostin, who thinks climate change caused the solar eclipse, the dumbest of them all. Because everyone knows the moon caused the eclipse, which is controlled by the View's gravitational pull. All right, Kat, did you ever see such a group? It's amazing how Joy and Whoopi became the smart ones.
Enter.
Not just any financial mishap. We're talking about a $450 million legal situation that hit her family like a meteorite. Most people would retreat from public life after such a catastrophic financial event. Take some time off, process, reflect, maybe even show a hint of humility. But our daytime host? She returned to her show with the same unwavering confidence, the same readiness to analyze everyone else's failings. And that's when the commentators from a competing network decided to weigh in. Two media personalities in particular, one a sharp-witted late-night host known for his acerbic commentary and the other a former athlete turned analyst with a philosophical bent, had quite a lot to say about this situation. The first commentator, known for his quick wit and deadpan delivery, didn't hold back. With surgical precision, he highlighted the contradiction of lecturing America about ethics while dealing with a financial catastrophe at home. His critique wasn't loud or bombastic. It was measured, pointed, and devastatingly effective. It was like watching a chess master calmly say, "Checkmate," while his opponent is still planning moves.
You don't need to find Trumpers. You need to fire your race baiters.
Yeah.
You need to fire the two races. You've had people. You had a McCain on there. You've had people on there before, and you ran them off. So the racist ones who want to stick to this, Whoopi and Sunny, and the, was it Bette Midler? What's her name?
What's happening at that daytime show is fascinating, the commentator noted with his characteristic smirk. They need fresh perspectives. The current lineup is struggling to connect with viewers who see through the performance. He painted a vivid picture of the contrast, a television personality preaching from her platform while her family's finances crumbled behind the scenes. His audience responded with enthusiasm. They weren't just laughing at a joke. They were celebrating what they perceived as accountability finally reaching the accountable. Online communities erupted with discussions. Comment sections filled with observations about the uncomfortable intersection of public moralizing and private chaos. Memes spread faster than breaking news, each one capturing the essence of this contradiction. But just as the conversation seemed to be settling, the second commentator stepped in. Unlike his colleague's quick-fire approach, this analyst speaks with deliberate calm that somehow makes his words land even harder.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. And it is funny, she's so wrapped up in identity and she had no idea who she was.
With the measured tone of someone explaining something obvious, he questioned how someone so focused on others' behavior could miss what was happening in her own household. His critique went beyond the financial situation. It addressed the entire ecosystem of certain daytime television shows. It's about authenticity, he explained. When you position yourself as an authority on right and wrong, your own actions become part of that equation. You can't separate the message from the messenger. His analysis cut to the core issue. The talk show had evolved from a forum for diverse perspectives into something resembling performance art. All conviction without substance, all judgment without accountability. The contrast couldn't be more stark. On one screen, a host earnestly lecturing America about social responsibility. On another, the undeniable reality of a $450 million legal catastrophe that seemingly contradicted everything she stood for.
Sausage maker Johnsonville is recalling more than 42,000 pounds of pork sausage for possible contamination with plastic fibers. Fortunately, authorities were able to track all 42,000 pounds to a single location in New York City.
The response from the daytime show was telling. Rather than addressing the situation directly, the other hosts rallied around their colleague. Some even suggested the criticism was unfair or motivated by bias, as if the financial facts themselves were somehow subjective. Meanwhile, the commentators continued their analysis. The late-night host pointed out the absurdity of condemning wealth inequality while simultaneously being involved in financial impropriety of such magnitude. Next week, they'll be filming from a discount furniture store, he joked. Special guests include their accountant and several very unhappy lawyers. The former athlete-turned-analyst put it even more bluntly, if you're going to evaluate everyone else's house, maybe make sure yours isn't built on quicksand. Viewers couldn't get enough. Video clips spread across social media platforms, comment sections filled with observations about the disconnect between public persona and private reality. The daytime show continued as usual, but something had shifted. The audience was watching with different eyes now.
Sunny gets the game ball. If it wasn't for her, if it wasn't for her asking that question, it might have been a closer election. But when oh no, nothing really comes to mind, I was like, cha-ching. Listen, they're bitter, they're angry, they're entitled. They also should be, this should have been a reset for everyone who pushed lies and misinformation for the last, they call them Hitler, they call these things, America rejected them. And instead of coming back and saying, we lied, they instead are now doubling down. So let her keep doing it, because if she keeps that up, we're going to keep getting the Senate and probably the House and the White House, because people see right through your lies. So keep doing what you're doing. Game ball to Sunny.
This story resonates because it's not just about one television host or one financial disaster. It's about a pattern we see repeatedly in media, the construction of moral authority that sometimes lacks foundation. What these commentators exposed wasn't just individual hypocrisy, but a systemic issue in how certain media personalities engage with their audiences. The kind of approach that assumes viewers are in need of guidance rather than respect. The host didn't respond with reflection or acknowledgement. The show continued with the same format, the same tone, the same certainty. But for many viewers, something had changed. The wizard was revealed behind the curtain, and the performance lost some of its magic. The late-night host moved on to other topics, satisfied that his point had been made. The analyst returned to his regular commentary, having said what needed saying. But their observations lingered in public discourse, raising uncomfortable questions about authority, accountability, and authenticity in media.
The audience that she tips big because even she knows she sounds insufferable. Hey, but at least I tip. This dame probably virtue signals on the toilet. But that's not the point here. While everybody else was trying to figure out how to survive as the government told us that breathing in public could kill us, Sunny was lolling around in her big house clicking on pictures of arugula while mixing Cocoa Puffs into her Haagen-Dazs. Oh, the oppression. I wonder if she wiped down the groceries herself or had her maid do it. She tips her too.
These commentators didn't just highlight one person's contradictions. They performed a public service by questioning a particular type of media personality. Those who have mastered the art of moral certainty while their own lives might not withstand similar scrutiny. It's about figuring out who's actually qualified to give life advice. Is it someone whose personal affairs are in disastrous disarray? Someone who lives in a completely different reality from most Americans? Someone who treats viewers less like equals and more like students in need of enlightenment? The commentators recognized this moment as symbolic of a larger issue. It wasn't simply about enjoying someone else's misfortune. It was about exposing a particular type of media disconnect, the space between the image projected on screen and the reality behind it. They weren't just criticizing an individual. They were questioning an entire approach to television, the professional finger-wagging that has become a genre unto itself. Shows where panelists deliver moral proclamations Monday through Friday, while their own lives might not stand up to the same standard of judgment.
Calls her a 10. I mean, how dare she objectify a woman with a sexist rating system, but it's such a typical thing from a 1.5.
Well said.
The takeaway? Hypocrisy has consequences, not just reputational, but sometimes financial. When the disconnect between what you say and what you do becomes too wide, audiences notice. While the daytime hosts continue their discussions, viewing habits are changing. Not because people don't care about important issues, but because they're increasingly sensitive to authenticity, or the lack thereof. What these commentators revealed, with both humor and gravity, is that American viewers hunger for genuineness. They're tired of being spoken down to by people whose own lives might be in disarray. They don't expect perfection, just consistency and self-awareness. The daytime show in question once represented something different. A place where diverse women could exchange ideas and occasionally disagree respectfully. But over time, some argue it evolved into something less dynamic and more predictable. Less conversation and more performance.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions? Like you said, and it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. But the problem with her is that she went full racist. She injected skin color into a fairly generic behavior seen in all spouses. Regardless of skin color, people marry, they listen to each other, they have something in common with them, they share their political views. She just didn't want to upset her husband by saying her husband makes her do everything, and then she'd have to accuse him of being a racist. Because if he told her that this is what white women do, then he's a racist. You see?
When the commentators delivered their critiques, they weren't just targeting a person, they were challenging a particular style of media engagement, one that positions hosts as authorities rather than fellow citizens. The financial fallout was significant, hundreds of millions of dollars in legal jeopardy. But perhaps more damaging was the blow to credibility. When your brand is built on moral clarity, contradictions of this magnitude aren't easily explained away. Meanwhile, the commentators saw their own audiences grow. Viewers responded to their willingness to point out uncomfortable truths about media personalities, who sometimes seem to operate by different rules than they preach. So where does this leave us? Can a show recover from such a fundamental challenge to its credibility? Can a host maintain moral authority after such a profound contradiction has been exposed? The answers remain to be seen. But what's clear is that in 2025, media consumers are increasingly sophisticated. They notice the gap between performance and reality. They're looking for commentators who acknowledge their own flaws rather than simply pointing out everyone else's. The lesson? If you're going to position yourself as a moral guide, make sure your own house is in order. Otherwise, you might find yourself the subject of commentary rather than the commentator. And that's a role reversal no television personality wants to experience. In the end, accountability finds everyone, even those whose job it is to demand it, from others. And when it arrives with comedic timing and sharp insight, audiences will be watching, not for guidance anymore, but for the next chapter in a very public reality check.